So, hi guys, thanks for joining me to do a walkthrough on adding plan services in a Harmony support plan. This is a short segment on the logistics of adding plan services. This function is used in many different areas in Harmony, but it's always related to your request for services. For you to request a service, you'll have to add plan services within a Harmony plan. So those different areas that you're going to, the different plans that you might have to add them to include initials, amendments. At this time, we're doing transitional amendments and renewals, and Appendix Ks. At some point, Appendix Ks and transitional amendments are going to be faded away, and we will have just regular full Harmony plans in the system. And we'll also have Appendix Ks will eventually transition to short forms. So that's kind of our trajectory for today, is to go through and walk through adding a plan service, which could be used in any one of these different plans. So plan types. So I'm joined by Kara and Cassandra and Kat, and my name's Delight, and we're just working together, like to talk through adding a plan service. If you're viewing this video and you're wanting to learn about how to add a plan or other functions of a plan, that's a different training. This is really focused on the logistics and troubleshooting adding a plan service, because we'll be honest, it can be tricky. I refer to this area as the combination lock, because you have to get every single piece correct to get what you need. So let's go ahead and just kind of talk about what your resources are. If you're not watching this video, you can always use your step-by-step instructions in the Harmony Guide. So this is what the Harmony Guide looks like. You should always use the most recently issued version, and you'll be receiving that from the Care Coordination Support team, which at this time is Kat, and she's here. When you're working through these steps, keep in mind that you'll always have to consider what service that you're entering as you work through an add. Each service has its own dynamics for adding to a plan service. So other thoughts to keep in mind is you have the step-by-steps in an initial. They're all broken down. In the rest of the Harmony Guide, you'll see it referenced and you can link back to that section, or you can watch this video and we'll talk through it. I am going to pull up a Harmony plan now, and this is, we're skipping a few steps. We're going past adding a plan and adding the details of the plan. And forgive me, I'm kind of pulling your leg here. Here's my I have parts of adding a plan here. I need to make sure that I include my start date and end date of the plan. And this is actually really important. When you add a plan service, it does think about what is the start date and end date of the plan. It factors it in. So when you add a plan service and it's outside of that time frame, it's not going to work correctly. So you always need to make sure that you're using the correct date. And so I'm going to just pretend that this plan is from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022. So every plan's different, but this one, we're just pretending it's for the year 2022. And I'm going to go ahead and save my plan. And you can see that when you have a plan, there are multiple areas that you need to work in. We're only talking about the segment of planned services. So I click on it and you can see I don't have any, it's blank. So I'm going to go up to the File menu and I'm going to add a plan service. At the top, it auto defaults to the plan year date. Now, that's not always what you need. Sometimes you have amendments, sometimes you have different scenarios that happen where you have to adjust these dates. These dates are the year, they reflect the service dates. So the start date and end date for the service. So Kara, what's usually like a given service that you have to have on a plan, no matter what?
Care coordination.
Yeah? Okay, so let's do that one first. So we start from the top. We have this defaulted at division, and we come to a region program drop box. And it's kind of an odd, it's not even a drop box. It's like these 3 dots. This is the first step that you have to go. Like, you know you're going to be adding care coordination. But what's this? This first regional program code. This is identifying what the service is, which program the service is tied to. So care coordination could be tied to either the waiver, but if you're doing targeted case management, which is a form of care coordination, that would be different. That would be CFC. Clear as mud. Like, let's talk about it again. So we'll get it when we add another service, but for now, let's open it up and take a look at what this area is. Lots of options here. Holy cow. And you can kind of see that it's broken down between region. So there's the region and then the program. And every single region has every single program type. So I'm just going to keep it simple and stay with Southwest. And I'm going to choose ALI as the program because we're just doing care coordination. And then we get to service code. This is where we select the type of service we're looking for. So I'm going to hit these dots here. And one of the best ways to search for the service code is just to use this drop down. I'm going to take a moment to talk you through this because there's some tricks here. It can be tricky. When we look at care coordination, that's there it is at the top. It's defined by it, you select it by agency. But there is one down towards the bottom that does trip people up. And that's the difference between residential habilitation and residential supported living. What is the difference? Like, why is that tricky? Residential supported living can be confused with habilitative supported living. There's a confusion there. So if you're looking to have, and I'm just going to click on it so you can see. Oh, nothing came up. What? Nothing at all. Why would that be? Well, like, we can kind of go back and let's try for care coordination too. This happens when you're working through it, just nothing happens and you sit there and you wonder like, what's going on? What do you think, Kara?
It didn't come up because that service isn't available in the ALI waiver.
Oh, see, combination lock there. So care coordination came up no problem, but we couldn't find the service of supported living under HAB because of the program. So thinking it through, making sure we know what we're selecting and why, because that really impacts your results from top to bottom. So thanks for that, Kara. So what else did I want to show you? I did want to show you that residential supported living is where we get our RSLs. That's what sometimes we refer to it as ALHs, when we're talking about serving our ALI recipients. So just kind of something that trips people up looking for supported living versus an ALH. Okay, so that's a really key area that may confuse folks. So let's go back to care coordination. And I'm going to choose monthly. And I'm going to start here. It kind of populates down. And now I'm going to go to Harmony Provider ID. This is where we select our provider. And let's go ahead and click on the 3 dots. And it doesn't pull anybody up. This is a little bit, this is an indicator of a red flag. Like, why didn't it change? Like, why don't I see anyone? I should see there has to be at least one agency. Well, it would be because we've recently had a rate change. And that rate change means that the certified providers on before July 1st have a different rate and a different, like they're pulled differently than after July 1st. So that means that I have to be really mindful of my dates coming up at the top. So I'm going to change my dates, okay, and kind of go from there. Kat, did you have any thoughts about that? No?
No, I think that's a very common kind of a issue that we've been seeing with the rate changes, that you think there are no providers, but it's really that you have to play around with your dates. Yeah.
This also happens if your provider has changed their Medicaid billing number or their name or they're just starting. Like they're like, I'm getting certified, I'm going to take your person in, like have them like make the plan. But you go in there and you put in the dates and you're like, okay, what day do they move in? And you're like, January 1st. And they're not certified on January 1st. They're like, nothing's there. It won't bill. It won't pull them. So the dates really impact. So like the dates really impact if you can find the provider. So that can be really, it can be tricky. So it means you need to communicate with the provider and ask them, when are you certified? Like, when did that happen? It could be that we have a rate change. Um, and if you have other scenarios happen where, it's neither of those, it could be other issues. And we'll talk about other possible issues that could be at the end that are unrelated to the Harmony system. Okay, so I'm going to go back. Always go back. Start from the top. Whenever you're like, something's wrong, go back up to the top, and I'm going to change my date from January 1st, and I'm going to clear this and put in June 30th, 2022. And I know that I have my correct region code, my correct program code, I have my correct service code. Now going down, results. That's a good indication that you have or you're making progress on your combination lock, okay? You're about to open it up and get the service in. So I'm looking for a very specific agency, and that's a fake agency, my fake agency. There it is, right there. You can type in and this goes for any provider. You can type in a common phrase like Alaska, and it's going to narrow the field to that provider type. Or you can scroll from that big list. If you have connectivity issues, sometimes it's best just to scroll and select versus doing searches if you have internet problems at the moment. So then I'm going to go ahead and choose my agency. And that takes us down to, you'll see that the Medicaid billing ID, it'll like populate. And sometimes we've had scenarios where it doesn't. Notice that it's blacked out. Don't worry about it. It's okay. You can't do anything about this. So move to the next field that you can do something about, and that is this units per period. When we think about the units per period, it's service specific. So for monthly care coordination, it's 1 unit per month. So I'm going to go ahead and type that 1. And then for the period, you can select a variety of different choices here: business day, calendar day, week, month. There are a lot of different services. Sometimes it makes sense to choose calendar day for like a RSL, like a group home, or it may be that you do weekly average because you're adding like a service like meal or chore, and the units are the weekly average for that time frame. So you'd select the weekly frequency. So for this one, going to month, and we have our total units for this time frame. So it auto-calculated to the time frame we're looking at, okay? Now, there may be instances where this is not right. Like you're amending something or you're closing something out and you're like, the units are not 6, the units are 0. You can always force the total units. Like if you're amending and closing and they never used a service, you could just put in 0 here and save it. So that's always an option for you. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and use that calculation and continue forward, okay? The next area we have is the describe weekly frequency and duration. This box is required because it gives the how often the service is delivered and for how long. So you do need to be specific in how often and for how long it's delivered. For care coordination monthly service, there's an expectation of 2 visits per month. And you can add additional information in this area if you have, virtual delivery or anything like that, that you want to convey. But it's all right to just keep it pretty limited and specific to how often and for how long. So 2 visits per month to monitor services. And this would be for the plan year. Now, before I move on from this area, I do want to give you, I'm kind of keeping this very limited to we're just adding the plan service, but this area in particular is something to track at any time, whether you're copying it, copying a plan service, the terminology is duplicating the plan service. You always need to make sure that it's completed because it's helpful for not only the SDS review team, but also the providers, to be clear to the providers, you have this total amount of units per week, but the expected frequency is that you deliver them 3 times a week for a specific amount of time, or maybe it's 4 times a week or 5. It really depends on what your client's needs are. That's where you would really break this down and have agreement between the client and the provider, okay? So the next area is describe how this service meets the needs identified in the personal profile. This is really where you're going to be clear on how this helps the person. So what is this service going to do to support this person in living an inclusive life, in their health and safety needs, in making sure that if there's any specific actions that need to be taken that direct their care, that's documented here for the providers. So making sure that it's person-centered, and that your client's delivery of service meets their specific needs, so customized to them. So in entering this section as the care coordinator, I would be clear, like, why am I the best care? What do I give the person? Like, why am I the best person for this client? There are there's some tendencies to copy and paste this from plan to plan, and we highly discourage that because this area is where you should be making it clear why this service is helping. We understand the person's needs based on their profile and the plan, but this is how we're delivering the supports. So how does this help and support the person really to live their best life? So expected outcomes, this is what the service is going to do. What is it doing? And where we would be specific about, this is like what we're telling a DSP, like, what are we doing here? So this is what the end result is for the client. So kind of breaking it down, like just keeping it simple. Our frequency and duration is how often is the service delivered and for how long each time it's delivered. Our description of service of meeting the needs is like, how does this help someone? Like what does it do to support them to live their best life? And the expected outcome is, what does the service, let me fix this. It's really service specifics.
Delight, can you make the screen larger?
Yeah.
Much better.
So what's the end result for the client? If they're requesting meals, you know, the expectation is they get meals that are nutritious and meet their needs. If they have an allergy, then I would make that really clear here, because that's, you know, a specific delivery outcome is that it's avoiding nuts or something like that. The next section that we have here is, there are 3 different components to this next set of questions, and these are conflict of interest questions. By saying yes or no, it doesn't impact if the services are delivered. It's more of a focus on ensuring that the services are being delivered in a manner that helps the person and keeps their interests in mind. So we're asking, do any providers for this service reside with the recipient? Yes or no? So if we say yes, that's okay. Are any of the providers for this service related to the recipient? If you say yes, that's okay too. But this is where it's really important. You need to explain the dynamics of the relationship. So is that person a guardian? That's okay if they are, but you need to explain, because it's possible, that SDS may have questions to make sure that the service delivery is appropriate, and they may talk to you, care coordinator, or have questions for the provider about the scenario. So just because you answer yes or no here isn't like a showstopper, but it may be a point of verifying that the service is being delivered appropriately with the best interest in mind of the person. And really, you just need to give context. Okay, so that is what's needed for initially adding a planned service. You have some options before you save. You can save and add another planned service, and it does something misleading. It saves it, and it just immediately looks blank. So I'm going to click that so you can see what that is. Don't panic when that happens. It doesn't mean you lost your work. Another option is just to hit save and close, and then manually go back to the file menu and file add. So I'm going to show you what it does. Save and add a planned service. And it's all blank again, but never fear. If we go down to our planned service, this is panic mode, because where is my planned service? I totally saved it. It just needs to be refreshed. So I can just click planned service again, and look, there it is. So it's okay. That's what a normal function of adding a plan service, okay? So at this time, if I wanted to continue for monthly care coordination, I would go back over here. You could file and add another plan service. Remember, I opened one already. And I'm going to start the next plan service for July 1st, and then work through each one of these drop downs all over again. And if you have a split like we were talking about, it's okay to copy and paste the information over. It's not a big deal. Don't overthink it. But what we do expect and what you should know is that every service you are requesting on behalf of your client needs to be reflected in this area when you're done. If it's not here and doesn't have its units and its start and end dates, then you're not actually requesting it, okay? So be very careful on making sure you're confirming the agency, the service type, the service, the units, and the dates. And that's kind of like the basics of adding a planned service. Do any of you have any questions before we talk about what are other reasons why you might struggle with planned services? Cassandra's good.
If you could remind me how to add PERS again, that would be great, because that's one that I keep struggling with all the time, and I am in Harmony every day. So
Thank you for that. We kind of hinted about that struggle earlier, but I think it's good to walk through it. Let's do it. We want to add PERS. So I'm going to add a plan service. And you know what? This time, let's just start with the July date. It's fine. Let's just try it out. And then we have our division and our regional program code. Now, this is where we do get hung up with PERS and CHORE. These two services are CFC services. So when I come in here, I have an ALI waiver, even though I have an ALI waiver for CHORE and CFC, or excuse me, CHORE and PCS, I'm getting my acronym straight here, guys. It's not even PCS, it's PERS.
it's PERS.
So thank you.
Yep.
So let me rephrase.
PERS.
All right, so let's just clear the deck here and say CFC services. Those services include CHORE, PERS, PCS, supervision and queuing, targeted case management. Now, CFC PCS does not need to be listed as a plan service. CFC PCS has its own service plan, totally separate from the support plan and adding plan services. But for other CFC services, you do need to make sure you're selecting the program code CFC to find it. So I'm going to select it. And I'm going to go to my service code. And let's go ahead and choose PERS. So that's Personal Emergency Response System. And tricky, I have some services that are end dated. Always choose the service that has a blank end date. You want one that's active, okay? And you'll see that with CHORE as well. So just keep that in mind, select a blank one. So in our pretend case here, let's just say that this is an initial install. We're now at our vendor area. So we'll hit or provider. Cassandra, I see your hands up. You have a question?
I do. So to go back, you said make sure you could select one with a blank end date. So do that means when we see a blank, we see a beginning date and a blank end date, that means that's an active plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's filled out, if the line item's filled out all the way with an end date in there, it's not going to pull any provider,
Okay.
especially for this time frame. It just won't work. It'll be broken.
Thank you.
As designed because that service end date happened. So when you look at, for this service, it's end dated because per switch to CFC. That's the end date, why it's closed out. So now you have an open-ended end date. I'll say that 10 times to select your service. All right, now let's go to our providers. Good sign. I see all these different provider options. That's great. Like I said earlier, you can search, but sometimes if your internet is just a little shaky, it can be easier just to scroll and find what you're doing. And when you do that and you notice like, wow, why are there so many Geneva Woods with this address? Which one do I pick? It doesn't matter. Pick whichever one you want with the correct address. Now, that's really important. So if I see that I have the Sterling Highway versus East County Fields, those are different providers. So verify the provider's address and select one of the lines that has the correct address. Excuse me. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this one. And then we come down all the way to where we next can answer, where it's free text. And we're going to do units per period. So only one install and in a full year. And so again, we get to our weekly frequency and duration. This one's pretty straightforward. It's an initial install. And there is spell check, so always a blessing. Same questions as before. So we have frequency and duration is how often and how long. How does this help the person? What's the outcome? Even though it's like an install, you still have to answer these questions about the provider. Do they live with the person? Yes or no? Are any of the providers related to the person? Yes or no? Maybe this is a yes, and it's like my cousin works there. And, it will be important for you to clarify if that relation is going to be the one that's delivering the service, that's doing the install. You'd have to say it. Because these are conflict of interest questions, making sure that there isn't a conflict between the person and that's receiving the service and the individuals that are working or receiving payment for delivering the service. And if there is a conflict, you just have to disclose it, okay? That's the, best approach to the scenario. So I'm gonna just save and close this one. Save and close the plan service. Any other questions? Okay, so I wanted to touch base again about why isn't plan services working? I'm having a problem trying to add a service. I can't find the service code. I can't find the vendor. Why would that be happening? Dates. Maybe it's the plan dates or the provider certification dates that are off. Like they're either not certified or something is, there's a discrepancy somewhere between your dates that's causing it to be a problem to locate the service code or the provider. It could be that rate change that we talked through, where we have that June 30th, 7/1. That's the current rate change number date frame that we're working on. In the future, we might have other ones, but this is one that we're experiencing right now. It could be that you have a regional program code selection issue. So what's the service? Is it a waiver service or is it a CFC service? Making sure you're choosing the correct regional program code. And the region should always be where the client lives, okay? The service code. Remember, we're talking about RSL, so the ALH versus the habilitative service, supported living. Because that phrasing is so similar, just be mindful of that area looking for it and trying to decipher between the differences. Also remember that service code, choosing the version that has an open end date. It's blank. It is still continued. So those are reasons why your data entry may not be working. So something about what you have entered is not opening the combination lock, okay? But the biggest issue that we found is that there's connectivity issues can also delay the search fields, the search menus from populating. And that could be because you have Wi-Fi. That's, like your Wi-Fi is your router's on like the other side of the house. And this, like something like it's just, who knows? Like maybe it's just dying. I've had my Wi-Fi router like be dying, and so it's just not functioning. That is a real issue we've had happen before. Another one is that your internet provider is out. Something's wrong with your internet provider. Wherever you're located in Alaska, something's wrong. And they're probably trying really hard to fix it because they know that their customers need their internet. So that's another one. And then finally, there are instances where Harmony is just broken. Okay, like it is just broken, and for whatever reason, and it's not on you. It's just, it is what is happening. When you encounter that, there's only so long. It's hard to gauge, right? Look at all these different reasons why your plan service may not add. That's a lot of reasons. So if you're going through and you're taking the steps of checking your dates, top to bottom, right? I'm checking my dates. I'm checking my program regional code. I'm checking my service code. And I'm doing some basic checks of like turning on my streaming service and seeing if my streaming service is working. Like, well, that's working, so it's not my internet. Making sure my Wi-Fi is on. Reach out. And, if you spend more than 15 minutes trying to figure out what's wrong with just adding one, please just contact SDS. You have lots of resources to do that. You can utilize a cat up there and in the corner of my screen, and she can give you some support for care coordination support at alaska.gov. You can reach out to us, the training team, SDS Training at alaska.gov. And especially when you have that connectivity issue, you can always reach out to DSDS Harmony Help at alaska.gov. They're going to probably ask you a series of questions to try to help triage, and figure out what's going on, what you're experiencing. So every single one of these teams are happy to help you. Just know that we want you to succeed because your success is client success, okay? So reach out if you have any questions. And thank you for spending some time with us.